Hi, I'm Dawn from New Jersey.
Hi, 我是臧启亮，我来自中国。
My name's Jack. I'm travelling Australia at the moment. I'm currently in Cairns.
Hi, my name's Julie, and I'm from Mayfield, East Sussex.
And autism to me is like snowflakes. There's not one true look or one true style. Every single person with autism is unique, special, and magical. I would say too that no person is autistic. They have autism. Just like you have two eyes, a nose, a mouth, and two ears. It's just part of you, but it doesn't define you.
对我来说，孤独症像是一种不完美，但这个世界本来就不是完美的呀。孤独症患者也只是普通人，像我一样过着平凡的人生，只是这种平凡的人生对他们来说却更加艰难。我为他们而感到骄傲。
To me, having Asperger's is something that has always been in the background to some degree, but I've managed to deal with it for most of my life because I've had friends and family to, demonstrate to me that I can do everything just like everybody else.
Autism to me is my son, who sees the world through a different lens and walks to the beat of his own drum. But it's also crippling anxiety and extreme demand avoidance to try and help that anxiety. It's my son working hard every single day to mask his autism, just to try and fit in with the world around him. It's wearing nothing but pants at home because clothes are just too much for his sensory issues. It's being talked at, in depth, at great length. It's talking, but never really speaking. It's not understanding emotions, and also being unable to regulate your emotions. Autism is just autism. It's a different way of looking at the world. Autism is what makes my son the wonderful, clever, unique person he is.
My name is Max Brown and I work at the University of Sussex and I am a student advisor for students with autism.
My name's Phil Rowland. I'm a teacher and I live in Uckfield.
I'm Debbie and I obviously live in Uckfield as well. And I'm a Special Educational Needs Coordinator, which is a SENCO.
Well, my name's Julie. I am mum to Sam. Sam's 8 now and was finally diagnosed with autism and sensory processing disorder and severe anxiety. Actually, it was May 2017. It was a long road to get that diagnosis.
We have the 3 boys, that's what we have. I guess we don't know what a normal child is like. So we don't really know how much of what their behaviour is actually just normal sibling behaviour and how much is it because of the autism and that sort of thing. So we don't know. All 3 on the autistic spectrum, 2 with a diagnosis.
Twins.
They are twins, non-identical twins, but very different.
To be diagnosed with autism, you fall into what's called the triad of impairments. So it's a condition that affects someone's social behaviour. So the triad of impairments affects your social communication, your understanding of social interaction, and your social imagination. Unfortunately, the way that autism is classified, it's from an approach that classifies a person as having a deficit in those 3 areas of social functioning.
So Ewan was diagnosed first. I guess we noticed things with him earlier because his is more, I guess, behavioural. We noticed very early with him.
Very physical.
He was very, very physical with everything. You know, he did a lot of hitting and biting and pinching, and kind of it carried on longer than you would expect. Lucas was, I think we began to see more and more he was isolating himself. So he wasn't playing and things like he babbled from very early age, but that babble never turned into anything. So his speech was affected.
He does what's called masking it. So he goes to school, he went to preschool, and he appears to be absolutely neurotypical when actually he's a ball of anxiety the whole time he's there. And then he comes home and that's when he explodes. The best analogy I've seen for it, I don't know if it's an analogy or a metaphor, but anyway, it's a Coke bottle and you shake it a little bit in the morning, then you shake it a little bit with each thing that happens throughout the day. And by the end of the day, that Coke bottle explodes. That was Sam.
As a teacher, when I have a meeting with a parent, you know, going over the provision plan which sets out how we're going to support their child, when they hear that I have children of my own that have autism, their shoulders drop. You can hear them go, oh, you understand then.
Yeah.
You understand the fact that, you know, you're telling me that your child is really well behaved at school. As soon as they get home, they're fighting with their brother, they're losing it. And because they're holding it all together, and then that's because it's been so intense and they've been really focusing on concentrating and trying to make friends and playing well and doing the work and mixing with people at playtime and eating their dinner with all the noise going around. And they can get home and they go, actually, and all of that release. And, you know, it's like, well, and then the parents going, well, why do they not play up for you when they play up for me? And I can understand and I can see that. And it's like, and I'll never forget that strategy of somebody saying with a Coke bottle, you know, a little shake, a little more of a shake, and this is what's happening at school. You know, oh, you know, why can't I go on the laptop?
Because it's their safe place.
Yeah.
Safe place.
Yeah, a little shake more. And then when they get home, the lid comes off. And
yeah, because it's safe. Because you're going to love me anyway, even if I behave like this. So.
Right, well, when he was diagnosed, nothing changed. Absolutely nothing. Because you go, he gets tested, the doctor says, yes, he has autism, he has severe anxiety, and he has sensory processing disorder, and you leave. I'd never heard of sensory processing disorder. I'd no idea he was anxious. I had no idea. There's nobody there tells you what to do next. So I picked the brains of people that I knew that had children with autism. I started researching it online, I bought books, and I taught myself about autism and sensory processing disorder.
Autism is a developmental condition which falls on a spectrum, so it is something that affects people in different ways. It's something that could be termed differently by different people depending on what your understanding is. So it's a neurobehavioural condition which impacts people in terms of their level of functionality. So within autism there's various different levels of how it impacts people. So you have what used to be termed Asperger's syndrome, which is a distinct level of functional impairment, and then you also have what's called high functioning autism, and right up to people who have non-verbal forms of autism. You could imagine it more as a sort of circle or a dartboard, and you could fall anywhere on that. To think of it more as a circle, it has much more options for recognising that, as well as that sort of quite arbitrary level of functionality, you're going to have your own individual strengths and weaknesses, and your own individual sensory experiences, and your own individual way of experiencing autism that will be entirely different to the other 100 autistic people you could compare yourself to.
Sam, you need to leave the comic alone now. We need to go. Sam, 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 come on. Come on, darling. Let's go now. Sam talks non-stop. Talks about everything. Well, no, he doesn't talk about everything. He just talks. He talks non-stop. But he talks about nothing. I don't know how he feels. I don't know what he thinks. I don't know anything of any importance. I don't know what he did at school during the day because he's unable to tell me. He communicates to me through his behaviour. So if he's having a meltdown, that's because he is anxious. Or it's too much, he's overwhelmed. These are the words that I'm teaching him to use now, are the words overwhelmed, anxious, because he doesn't understand emotions, really.
So I took them to the hairdressers. I was really anxious, and I'd said to Lucas particularly, you know the clippers that Daddy uses for his hair, would you like to give those a go? And not thinking, I guess the thing again with autism is you just don't know how they're going to react in any situation. So I was thinking there's going to be the noise of the clippers. Will that trip him up?
Will there be other
Will
people
it be
there?
that he doesn't know the setting? Will it be that he doesn't know the person that's killing his hair?
Doesn't like the feel of it.
Will he not want to
He
wear
doesn't
the,
like the feeling of the hair.
cape thing? And so we went in, and I deliberately picked a hairdresser that I knew would be quiet, that would be contained, so they couldn't see out of the windows for distraction. There wasn't going to be over an amount of noise. There wasn't going to be an over amount of chairs or other people in that particular barber. So that's why I went there. And they sat down at the same time, and Ewan was very much sat there, didn't say a word, and the guy was trying to have a conversation with him. How was your holiday?
I'm here to do a task. Let's just get on with it.
What kind of haircut do you want?
No.
Can you lean your head that way? and then Lucas and I was kind of like, okay. Do you want to have a go with the buzzy noise thing? And he's like, yeah, okay, because Ewan is, which was great. I mean, they are fantastic support for each other. So he had a go, and I'm stood there behind going, really good, and he kept itching his nose. And it was getting frustrating for the lady that was doing his hair. And I could see that she was like, would you like another itch? Being sarcastic to him, and I'm thinking, that's not what he
Good job I wasn't
needs
there.
here.
Good job that was you and not me.
So I'm going to him, right, let's do a challenge. Can we keep our hands, see how long we can keep our hands on our knees for? And I was doing things like that, and which worked. And he came out, and he had all his hair cut, and that was tingly, and I was jumping up and down on the hairdressers, going, really well done, that's absolutely fantastic. It's just a haircut.
A lot of people with autism have a sensory sensitivity, so they can be really sensitive to noise or to light or something like that. So all these things that could happen that could be unpredictable or could be sensory quite overwhelming, sometimes that could be happening to the extent that it could cause quite a lot of anxiety and distress for someone, that it could cause them to tip over into what's called meltdown. So that could cause such a level of kind of distress and panic for someone that it can mean that that person can have a situation where they are just so overwhelmed, they're just kind of really just don't know what to do. So that is a kind of extreme example of where things have become too much for an autistic person.
If he, for example, doesn't want to get dressed and doesn't want to put his shoes on, so he's pitching a fit outside the front door, doesn't want to put his shoes on, that's because he's afraid or anxious to do what I'm asking him to do. So he does a thing that's called demand avoidance. That's another thing I've learned, demand avoidance. So instead of telling me like other children would, Mummy, I don't want to go here, Mummy, I don't like this, Mummy, this doesn't sound like a good thing, Mummy, this scares me, he throws shoes at my head, or he hits his head off the wall, or he screams this high-pitched scream while throwing himself around the room.
Hugh does not like showers, only buckets, and hates water in or even near his eyes. I got Hugh into the bathroom. I locked the door, and Hugh took one look at the water and started shouting.
No bath!
Hugh, you need a bath.
No bath!
Shit. Completely forgotten to give Hugh a countdown for his bath.
No bath!
Hugh went crazy, crawling, kicking, hitting and screaming. Oh God, the screaming that pitch. Oh, my head. I tried to pick Hugh up and take him away from the bath. I got punched, kicked, managed to get him into the bedroom, still screaming and lashing out.
Oh my God. When Sam was 2, that's when I first noticed there was something different about him. Because we would have horrendous meltdowns in shopping centres. And I mean horrendous. There was one in House of Fraser that, well, I think it was Blue Water, but it started in House of Fraser. And the reason he had a meltdown was because I wouldn't let him run around the car park. I wouldn't let him run around the car park. So he threw himself in the middle of the road in the car park and screamed and kicked and punched, and I had to pick him up, walked down to Blue Water, and I dumped him at the door of House of Fraser. And he followed me and then threw himself on the floor and screamed. He did that for half of Blue Water. And people were pointing and staring. It's like, this is my child. He's not naughty, he has autism, and the noises that you are making is too much for him. I'm not saying the world needs to change to accommodate my child, I'm just saying it needs to just stare and judge a bit less. Or maybe shouldn't say stuff like that. This is my family, this is what we are, this is what we look like, this is us.
And I think most of the time, I think we are fairly chilled. I think we don't worry too much when we're out what people think, actually. I think on the whole we really don't. We've never had anyone say anything to us. I would dare them, if I'm honest.
But I would love.
But I find going out with your dad
well
very
done.
difficult.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah, that's what we never get.
Appreciation of it. Yeah, it's always.
So you pick up on that. I don't seem to see what anyone else.
I do. But it's to go. No, I can see your children challenging. You're doing great. You know, and then like in fact,
but then how often do you say that to other parents? You don't.
I do. I do. Yeah.
I give smiles. I give encouraging smiles.
Yeah, I do because I know I want. I should never crave
I've
things.
cried in shopping centres because I've been judged. So if I see somebody else who you can see struggling,
I always make sure
job
I do.
Can change their whole day.
Yeah.
Although that would be what would guarantee me crying. If you told me I was doing a great job, I would go, oh.
That's my biggest thing that I say to you a lot, and I say to my mum a lot, and I say is actually, I beat myself up daily on the type of parent I am. And I always look at how much I'm failing my children and I should be doing more. And I said, I'm never, I don't have anyone telling me any different. I said, I need someone to sometimes say to me, do you know what? You're a good parent. Your kids are so lucky to have you. And I don't get that. And so unless someone says that to me, I'm just going to assume that I'm crap.
I think the positive points on autism is that it's made probably my love for my children greater, because I'm so proud of a lot more things than I think that they achieve every day than I would be if the children were normal. You know, and
The little things mean more.
yeah, I think that's it. I think that's really it. And I think having their special, unique quirks, their unique obsessions, their unique way of doing it makes them who they are, which then makes them just lovable, every one of them in their own way, and you know, just makes you immensely proud to be their parent. You know.
What's the one piece of advice that you'd give to parents of children with autism?
Fight. Fight for them. They deserve it, and it won't be given to them. It won't just naturally be given to them. And it should be. Any child with a special need, you know, they're the children that shouldn't have to fight. But you will have to fight, and fight for your child, because it will get you what they need, and they deserve to be fought for. And just accept them for who they are. Don't try and change them. You know, and anyone that wants you to change them, tell them where to go. Stick your fingers up.
And the hardest thing, time. Give them your time. Interact with them. It's hard when you're tired. It's hard when you can see that, oh, I've got loads of work that I need to do tonight, but I'm going to do that bedtime routine. I'm going to read to them. And if I don't do that, Mum will get a meltdown because I've broken the routine. But also, it's rewarding having that time. And be it them crawling all over me, or, you know, or bouncing on the trampoline, doing the story for bedtime, doing the bath time. Give them the time. However difficult it is, give them that time.
And actually, the last thing I would say is, you're doing a great job. Because most of the time, with a child with autism, you won't feel like it. But you are.
Well, I hope that you found that interesting, and I hope that the picture was good enough for you to enjoy it. It's not something that we readily understand, and even if we do, we tend to get frustrated with and therefore impatient. And that gave us some insight into the way that parents treat their autistic children, and I hope that that gives us.
Hi, I'm Dawn.
As usual, the thing zips all over the place, and it shouldn't. Anyway, we will now move on to something else and a change of pace. I think we shouldn't do anything that's too heavy after that. Let's go to the Ghost Train, which we play fairly regularly, but it's always worth another look. It's a bit of fun, but.
Many people find commuting by train tiresome. But one of the pleasures of taking a train to London is that it passes through some of the most beautiful countryside in the UK. None more so than the view of the countryside as the line approaches Clayton Tunnel, just north of Brighton. The tunnel is the longest on the line, at 1.25 miles, running under the South Downs. It's unusual because the entrance is not the usual railway brick. It is instead designed to look like the gateway to a castle. On top is a cottage built for the railway's lightkeeper in 1849. The tunnel itself was opened in 1841 and the cottage added later. Idyllic. But after 1861 it became a nightmare, or at least for those who believe in ghostly goings-on. In August of that year, a night train left Brighton, travelling north to London. Partway through the tunnel, it stopped at what it thought was a danger signal from the lightman. The engine driver was correct. The railway official had indeed given a danger signal, but the train had rushed past him before pulling up. Thinking the train had cleared the tunnel, the unfortunate lightman gave the all clear to a following train. And it slammed into the back of the first train in the dark, killing 23 and injuring 176 more. It was the worst ever accident on the line. And people walking on the downs over the underground passage have reported hearing the screams of the passengers as the trains pile into each other. The line is now also a direct line from Lewes. I've travelled through that tunnel 1,000 times. I've never heard a scream other than the screech of the wheels and brakes. But I've never walked over the downs at that point either. And I turned down an invitation to stay in the cottage overnight. In fact, I get tense each time I go into the tunnel, knowing what had happened more than 165 years ago. But my fellow passengers carry on reading their newspapers, obviously oblivious to both the tragedy and the ghosts. I could sometimes scream at them. The ghosts of Clayton Tunnel. Eerie. Bloody eerie.
Oh, there you are, the ghost of Clayton Tunnel. And that incident is said to have inspired Charles Dickens' story about a train accident. And he, indeed, was involved in one in which people were killed. Fortunately, he'd gone into the first carriage and it fell off a viaduct. And all but the engine and the first carriage fell off. The rest plummeted and killed several people. He was lucky. He was saved. Anyway, we'll now press on and look at see what else we might have. Let's go into the garden, shall we? Yes, we'll go into the garden, I think. Here we are, hollyhocks and courgettes, with Joey and his helper, Alex.
Good morning, peeps. We're back in Hailsham after 3 weeks. I've had a few issues going on with health and various other stuff, but back to full strength again now. Gardens are looking good. As you can see, the rain is here to help things grow. So our little perennial garden in Hailsham that we've been working on for the last few months is now really coming together. We've got enormous hollyhocks growing. The alliums are all out, cicerantiums. It's an absolute blast of life now, and we're still not in the main growing season. So another few weeks, it'll really come to life. I walk down through the garden, and you'll see there's a naughty dog hiding in the foliage as usual. But we'll have a stroll in here, and we'll have a look at the vegetables. So as you can remember, we planted courgettes and peas and sugar snaps in the outside bed. And as you can see, these have come on an absolute treat. So the courgettes are now flowering, and the sugar snaps and the peas are doing remarkably well. I'm very pleased. In fact, they're flowering as well. I'm just going to spin around at this low level and show you how the garden is looking. Look at that. That is a proper perennial garden. And as you can see, the theme of purple, white and green has been completely maintained. And actually, I'm really pleased with it. It's looking nice. Obviously, the second year, next year, it will look better. Gardens always come into their own once they've been in and they've established. But Bruce, who lives here, is doing a marvellous job. Excuse me, marvellous job of watering everything. I've just done some light weeding, and the ground is really soft. So he really has been watering, especially during that really hot spell we had. I'll just show you the greenhouse, because the greenhouse is also doing remarkably well. We've got a couple of cucumbers, which are also just flowering. Then we've got some chilies, some peppers, and then an array of tomatoes. Unfortunately, we did have a little bit of a disaster, and as you can see, my greenhouse here has no door. So I'm not actually able to keep it really warm, but it's not the end of the world, because during the really warm days you are meant to open the greenhouse, otherwise it can all start to, you can get too much moisture in there and things can rot. Joey, stop that. Things can rot and you can have problems. So it's not the end of the world, but it does mean that on obviously cooler days and days like this when it's raining, that you don't get the heat going in there. So our crops will be possibly later than some people. The reason why we have no door is because the storms that came earlier in the year basically blew the door off. It flew across the garden and shattered. So that was the end of the door, really. But yes, it's really coming together. I'm just going to show you this enormous hollyhock, which in a couple of weeks' time should have a prong of about 2 or 3 feet on top of beautiful, I think these are pinky purple, because I bought those to go with the white foxgloves, which you can see in the middle there. There is a white foxglove just coming up. The other foxgloves haven't actually flowered yet. Anyhow, just a short one today, because I'm just getting myself back into the swings of things. It's been a really busy few weeks. The gardening world is going crazy. It always does in May, June. Well, April, May and June are always the busiest times of the year. But we'll be back here next week, and hopefully by then we might even have some sugar snap peas and mange too that maybe could be picked and eaten. So that'll be where we are. Anyway, from Joey and I, have a good day. See you soon. Bye.
Well, it's lovely going into the garden with Alex and Joey. I haven't heard from them in a little while, so I better chase them up. Not only that, but Alex is a good friend, and I like to make sure that he's okay. Like the rest of us, he's suffered to some extent a little ill health, but he's a very entrepreneurial sort of chap, and he works himself to death, as indeed some of us do. So we'll have to see where he is and how's he is faring. And in the meantime, let's see what time it is. It's 11 minutes past 10. What we'll do is, I think, is we'll just see if we've got something else that might fit in nicely to. Right. Yes. Let's go to Kosovo, and a couple of tall tales from me. Right? Oh dear, dear, dear. Some of my tall tales. Are they true or are they not? I'll leave you to make up your mind. Yes.
The life of a journalist, or a nomad, or a roamer, or whatever you want to call me, can bring up some very interesting situations and some very interesting places. And strangely enough, one of the places that I remember very fondly is Kosovo. And I had a couple of experiences there that I thought were amusing. They certainly weren't at the time, but in retrospect, not bad. On one occasion, I was there training some journalists, and there was a kerfuffle outside the office window, and I saw that the police were surrounding a man who was waving a revolver, and they had batons in their hand. Perhaps not unreasonable in the circumstances. But one of the chaps that I was training was an American photographer, and he was busy snapping away. And the police spotted him and immediately made for him, and he bolted back into the office. The police poured in through the front door, and my office was on the second floor. And I went down the stairs and in a very brave way said, "Halt, who goes there?" Thinking that perhaps the gesture might worry them, as they were Kosovar police and I was as a Brit. And an English voice came back and said, "Who are you?" To which I responded, "Well, who are you?" And it turned out that these police were being trained by an English policeman. To which I said, well, if you're training these police and I'm training these journalists, you know very well that you cannot take a camera away from somebody in the street.
except if you are suspicious that it affects national security. Other than that, you have no right to take a camera from people. He was a half-decent sort of chap, and we sat down and we resolved the issue. But in the meantime, my staff, seeing the police flood in, and Kosovo being Kosovo, where in fact the police had up until that particular time, post-war, in the early 2000s, had a considerable amount of power. And so they had rushed up the stairs and they had phoned General Agim Ceku. Ceku was a hero of the war with Serbia. He later became Prime Minister, and I believe today, is still a minister in charge of the armed forces. But I got to know him, and I found him to be a very decent and honest man, even though he sees things as a soldier, and one would expect that. But anyway, we had become friends, and the staff, my staff, had phoned the general and said, General, the police are going to lock up Mr. Keith. To which the general said, tell him not to worry. If he gets locked up, I will send the army down and get him out. It's the first time that I've had an army and the protection of an army to get myself out of a sticky spot with the police. As it turned out, the jail did not beckon, the army did not come down, but the fact that General Ceku was ready to send them in and get me out was very comforting. As it's coming up to Christmas, the other thing that I found very amusing is quite often very serious people get into debates about how intolerant we are and that societies should recognize those who are of different faith and so on and so forth. Well, Kosovo is 98% Muslim. And one of the things that I wasn't sure about, and I didn't want to offend my staff, and I said to them, would you like to celebrate Christmas? Do you want to decorate the office? And what do you do? Oh yes, please, they said. Well, I had a little bit of money in the budget, so I said, well, off you go, get a few decorations. And off I went. I came back later in the day and there had been hectic activity, and I walked in and there was more ribbon, more baubles, more Christmas decorations, more tinsel than you could shake a stick at. There was a Christmas tree, there was absolutely everything. And you understand I've never been to a brothel, but that's the way I think that an inside of a brothel would look like. It was decorated to the hilt. And this in a Muslim country. And I walked out later that day and they sort of laughed at me and said, Mr. Keith, we don't really worry about these things. We celebrate Christmas and we enjoy it even though we're Muslims. And sure enough, outside the main hotel, the Europa Hotel, there was a nativity scene, quite a large one, put there by the city. And around the corner was a mini-moke, one of those sort of open jeeps that you find at the seaside whenever we're allowed to go to the seaside, that people travel around it. And around the corner came the mini-moke with music blaring, jingle bells and carols and so on and so forth, and with a Father Christmas yelling out, Merry Christmas, have a happy time, and so on and so forth. It took me aback. The one thing that you expect in a Muslim country is that they don't celebrate Christmas. My goodness me, in Kosovo it was a Christmas to remember. It was terrific. And we had several parties, initiated, I may say, by my Muslim staff and not by me, although I'm always good for a party. So, out of jail, courtesy of the General, Christmas in a Muslim country with mini-mokes, Father Christmases, nativity scenes, and an office looking like a brothel. Doodle pip.
Well, there you are. One of my experiences in Kosovo. You can tell that my voice is going. It's been overworked this last few days, and I hope that we're going to find that it gets a bit of a rest pretty soon. I've had to do a little extra duty this. Now this I don't know where I got this from, but I was terribly amused by it. So I think that you might just look back in time on this one to see what they did with witches. By golly, is it?
We have found the witch. May we burn her? Burn her!
How do you know she is a witch?
She looks like one.
Bring her forward.
I'm not a witch. I'm not a witch.
But you are dressed as one.
They dressed me up like this. And this isn't my nose. It's a false one.
Well,
We did do the nose.
the nose?
And the hat. But she's a witch.
Did you dress her up like this?
No!
No!
Yes. Yeah, a bit. She has got a wart.
What makes you think she's a witch?
Well, she turned me into a newt.
A newt?
I got better. Burn her anyway!
There are ways of telling whether she is a witch.
Are there? What are they? Tell us.
Tell me, what do you do with witches?
Burn them up!
And what do you burn apart from witches?
More witches!
Wood! So, why do witches burn?
Because they're made of wood.
Good! Oh, yeah. So, how do we tell whether she is made of wood?
Build a bridge out of her.
Ah, but can you not also make bridges out of stone?
Oh, yeah.
Does a wood sink in water?
No, it floats. It floats. Throw her into the pond.
What also floats in water?
Bread. Apples. Very small rocks. Cider. A great gravy. Cherries. Mud. Churches. Lead. A duck.
Exactly. So, logically,
if she weighs the same as a duck, she's made of wood.
And therefore...
A witch!
Very good, we shall use my larger scales. Right, remove the supports. Is it fair cop?
Well, that ended a bit abruptly. I hadn't thought it was ending quite that abruptly, but anyway, that's what they did with witches, tongue in cheek, in the past. Let's see if actually we shouldn't. Should be There we go. Let's get rid of some of these things, and then they won't interrupt us. And useful though they have been in the last couple of hours. So it's left with just me. Now, I think that, let's see, I will, I have here, is, I think, yes, is a program we did on called Voices, which was to do with song and so on. It's in 2 parts. I don't have time to play both parts, but we'll play the first part, and that will see us out nicely, I think. So here we go.
This is a bit of a departure for Mirador, but we're going to have a half hour of music for this Sunday evening. I'm sitting in St Michael's Church in the middle of Lewes. Actually, it's on High Street, and it's been the church for nigh on 1,000 years for the parish of Lewes, which is very small. In fact, there are only about 3 of us who actually are on the church roll that are residents of the town. But it was, historically, it is recorded as being 1140, but some historians say it was the castle church. So it was here very shortly after the Normans took over, and some people date it as early as 1080. And there's some merit to that, because the priory, which you'll see in a few minutes as we do some song, the priory was started to build in 1086. So they very swiftly did build churches and priories and so on after the Norman conquest of 1066. Anyway, this is what is lovingly known as a high church. It's Anglo-Catholic. It's a beautiful church. It's an ancient church, and it has a magnificent musical director in Nick Houghton, who inspired me to do this by giving me some music from the Lewes singers, and you'll hear in a little while. But what we're going to do, first of all, is to kick off with Dandelion Charm, a duo out of New Haven, Claire and John Fowler. Magnificent voices. You may have heard them if you've watched any programs on Mirador. Here they are, Claire and John, Dandelion Charm.
It's a tightrope walk on an ice edge, honey, and you can play that game, but it won't be funny she's high, she's a skywalker. Doesn't matter. Just focus your mind on the wire ahead. It doesn't matter. It's a long way down. Long way down. So you place your foot to assess the tension and convince yourself to continue knowing it's wrong. Oh, it's wrong. It's wrong. But when she's high, she's a skywalker. Doesn't matter. Just focus your mind on the wire ahead. It doesn't matter. It's a long way down. Long way down. What a spectacular performance. Though there will be no net for her. Such a spectacular performance. Who's going to break her throne this time? Oh, Skywalker this time. Oh, Skywalker.
But when she's high, she's a skywalker.
Skywalker.
Just focus your mind on the wire ahead. It doesn't matter.
Skywalker.
Balancing high above the world tonight.
Skywalker again. Oh, again. Oh.
The next singer you may also have heard, Yeva Surian, who is Armenian. What does that have to do with Lewis? Well, it doesn't really, except that I've travelled extensively in Armenia, and it was the first country in the world to embrace Christianity as a state religion, and that goes back to about 600 AD. And they have some magnificent churches. They have their own version of the Vatican, and all so that you can see Mount Ararat as a backdrop. It's quite magnificent, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But the Armenians, particularly Yeva's sister, Astrid, has been very kind to me over the years, and she was the lady that pointed me in the direction of her sister and said she's got a magnificent voice, and I sometimes write some of the words. Do you think you could take a listen? And I did, and I was absolutely bowled over. Now, I've been very irreligious and I should take my hat off while I'm in church, but let's go to Yeva and listen to her golden voice.
He never bring you down or leave you alone. Trust him all in all, 'cause he's the light. He'll lead your way through darkest of times. He'll never let you go. And he'll be there
Well, there we are, Eva Surian, and also a delightful family. And some of the stuff is written by her sister, Eric, and her name is very difficult to pronounce for we Westerners, as it were, because we are talking about the Caucasus. And so she calls herself Star. But she's a very talented lady too, a very talented family, and they pitch in. They are very concerned about their country, which of course is having its own problems with some of the old CIS countries, with the Russians threatening to get involved, although that may have changed now as a result of the Ukraine war. But certainly I found Armenia to be a delightful country, but not only that, but it spawns talent. You can go to anywhere over the old Soviet Union and, for that matter, the new CIS, and find Armenians all over the place. And indeed, you can in the United States as well, in any of the new world countries where people would tend to emigrate to. Armenians are to the forefront, and they're a very talented lot. So we're very pleased to have Yeva. I think that actually we've got 20 minutes. I think we might play the second part of that. I think see us out totally, if I can find it. Yeah, there it is. So let's do that. Uncomfortably because I'm propped up against the pulpit while I'm doing this, and sometimes you can see the beauty of the church in the background. Sometimes you've just got my shoulders, and that's a pity, really. But I will show some pictures of St. Michael's as we go along in this program. It was my wife's favourite church. She was very active in it, and sadly she departed from us about 3 years ago, and we had a requiem mass here. And it was a magnificent occasion, a quite wonderful service. But mostly, the church was lit up by flowers, wonderful, wonderful flowers. And here are just a little look at some of them before we go to our next artist, and that is the Lewis Singers. The Lewis Singers, directed by Nick Houghton, who is the director of music here and plays the organ each Sunday, but also organises magnificent concerts in this church, really worthwhile coming to.
There was an organist before him who also sadly passed away called Don Bishop, who was still playing the organ at age 90 for the Lewis Old Grammar School, who hold their assemblies in this church. And Don could make that organ sing, and it's good to now that we've got Nick to follow on, because he makes it sing as well. So let's listen to some of the music that he directs with the Lewis Singers.
Yes, chance to see. I'm actually pulling it out a little bit. Once again, let's fade it. Tomorrow, 1, 2, 3. Tomorrow shall be my dancing day. I put my shoe on. Dancing day, later. Dancing day. Okay, tomorrow, 2, 3, 4. Tomorrow shall be my dancing day. I put my true love. That was perfect. That was the first time. Second verse. What are the words? Then was I born. 1, 2, 3. Then was I born of the virgin pure. Of her I took fleshly substance. Thus was I knit to that angel true. Oh, my true love, to my God, sing out my love. Oh, my love, this have I done for my true love.
Some of you who are new to Mirador may be slightly bemused about Sir Genry and Edward Stick. Here's Edward Stick in all his finery, although when he's in mufti he looks a bit rawer than that, made of pure wood. Edward Stick is my stick that I use when I walk around the Priory. I have Parkinson's, and there are a number of other worthy people who have Parkinson's: Billy Connolly, Michael J. Fox, Kid Jensen, the Radio 1 DJ in the 70s and the 80s, and Neil Diamond declared that he got it the other day too. There are a number, and of course Muhammad Ali was probably the most famous person to have it. So it strikes the very famous, except that it struck me, and I'm not very famous at all. But I think one of the things that you have to do is to keep going. You have to keep a good sense of humour, a good determination to do things. That's why you've got this awful television programme. And that way, there is a way towards helping people with Parkinson's. There is another way that we've discovered, and that is that there's something in champagne that helps with Parkinson's. And I have started to try and persuade the NHS that they should give us Dom Perignon on prescription. Haven't got very far yet, but write to them and say, champagne for haze, help with Parkinson's. Okay, here we go, again with Dandelion Charm.
said, sing, canary, sing. If you're good, then I might let you in to the passion that burns in my heart. That's just the start, but I won't give you anything. Sing, canary, sing. If you're good, then I might let you in to the passion that burns deep within. Then I'll begin to strip you of everything. He said, sing, canary, sing. If you're good, then I might let you in to the passion that burns in my heart. That's just the start, but I won't give you anything.
Sing, canary, sing. My hatred caresses your skin.
I'm going to go back to another song from the Lewis Singers now before we finish off with Ivan. And I should tell you about this church. Tom Paine was married in this church, and lots of people say, who's Tom Paine? Not well known here, although very well known in the United States, because he actually is credited with starting the American Revolution. He was here as a customs agent. He was married in this church and wrote something called The Rights of Man in Lewis, and then went off to the United States and practiced it, and they loved it. Bill Bryson, the historian, says that Tom Paine coined the term the United States, and also that he said we should be governed, when we were actually governed by royalty at that particular time, that there should be a place called the House of Commons. Well, those are two names that ring a bell, aren't they? And Tom Paine was married here. I don't think he's a very nice man, actually, but nonetheless, a very powerful man. And he managed to get things going so that there was indeed a revolution of several sorts in both the UK and in the US. Anyway, we're going to the Lewis Singers now, and I hope you enjoy. I've been a journalist for most of my life. I've been in Northern Ireland for 15 years at the height of the Troubles. I went to Kosovo and spent a couple of years, and in Sarajevo for a year, and in Bucharest for a year in Romania. I've been to Russia. I've been all over practicing journalism and training journalists. So I'm a bit of a wanderer, and you meet awfully nice people when you're going around the world. And two of the nicest were Mary and Clive Shorthouse, who lived in Lewis but now live in New Haven. And Clive really is one of the most eccentric people I've ever come across, and he's just lovable. And the family have looked after me for a good many years, and very kind they are. But Clive and I once had a cake in our care for a raffle, and we decided to try it, and we scoffed the whole lot, only to be told by the lady who had donated the cake that she would want to see the thing raffled. So we had to scout around Lewis looking for a cake that looked vaguely like the one that we'd scoffed, and we couldn't remember really what it was like. Anyway, that's Clive. But the one thing that Clive and Mary do have is they have three very talented daughters. Fleur is a storyteller, a professional storyteller, a very good one. Charlotte is a classical singer, and Claire, with John, is Dandelion Charm. So there you are. That is the Shorthouse family. They're almost like the Von Trapps. Let's get on with it, and now let's hear the last word from Yeva.
Cister peres bարձրացնում Տալիս ես թևեր, որ թրջեմ ինչպես արծիվը Գութը քո հավերժ է Տեր Սերը քո մեծ անսահման է Come
down for this last little bit, but after all, it is church, isn't it? So just to end this evening's musical extravaganza, I hope you've enjoyed it. It's not something we will do regularly, but we're going to do it from time to time because there's a lot of musical talent in those. So, yeah, just to say goodbye, and I'm glad that you joined us. By the way, this is Edward Stick in mufti. For those who haven't followed Edward Stick and Sir Genery. Sir Genery, by the way, I don't think I explained earlier, is the sculpture of a medieval helmet of a knight that fought in the Battle of Lewes in 1264. And we've named him Genery, or Sir Genery, because in those days the name John and Henry were prevalent, so we've combined them to call him Genery. He's got his own Facebook page, he's got his own fan club, and he presents his own programme on Mirador. So I hope that you'll visit Sir Genery and perhaps understand who he is, because he talks regularly about Lewis history to Edward Stick. Edward Stick, Esquire. There he is. Okay, well that's it. One thing I can now depart. I'm going to put my hat back on, feel almost undressed without it. I'll say cheerio. Toodle pip.
Well, we've just gone over by 5 minutes this morning. Hope you'll forgive us for that. But we did try to cram in as much as we possibly could. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:30. Until then, and I'm happy to say, is the main team at Mirador are still here, still lurking, and we'll have to say goodbye. Toodle pip.